Hello, brick sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and today we've got an exciting new video here. This is construction tips, tricks, and techniques. Now, if you follow my content, I recently put out this spring challenge, which is to build a house under construction. So I wanted to share with you guys some techniques, some things I discovered along the way that maybe you guys could use as well. If you guys want to check out the challenge, I'll have the video linked here as well as at the end of the video. And it is not too late to get involved. We have till the end of the month. There's plenty of time. There's also a micro build, which it doesn't take a lot of time at all to put together a micro build. So definitely check that out if you want to get involved. There's still plenty of time. It just has to be by the end of this month. So let's go ahead and dive in here. I'm going to touch a little bit on all kinds of different things. It's going to be kind of all over the place, but I just want to show you guys some cool stuff that you can use in your mocks, and hopefully maybe we can learn some things together here. Now, first thing I want to talk about is tools. If you're going to build construction, you're going to need tools. Now, I did an entire tips, tricks, and techniques about tools. I'll link it here as well as at the end of the video. But I want to show you guys some of my more modern stuff that I kind of plan to use in my upcoming mock. The first one is an updated version of my miter saw. My Lego miter saw, not my real one. And this is how I build it. 2x4 plate, 2 of these double jumpers on top. This 1x2 with rounded edges on the bottom. Now you can pick any color you want for your miter saw. I'm sure some people favor certain brands of tools that might use a certain color. I used orange for this. Not that I favor necessarily any brand that has orange, but I thought it looks good. So we got a couple of 1x2s on the sides and a jumper on top. Now this is very important that these have hollow studs on here because that's going to hold the fence for the miter saw. And this is going to make up the table for the miter saw. Rounded piece here gives you the idea that this would rotate. These two panels are going to be the fence, and they'll leave a nice gap in the middle here for the blade. On the bottom, faucets make fantastic table legs if you've never used them before. And you can kind of angle the faucet portion to look like a support for a table. And I mean a table of any kind. Obviously, this is like a construction tool item, but you can use this for all kinds of tables. And see, I just kind of point them at each other. Looks pretty good. I'm also going to put a power cord down here just for a little added extra effect. And then for our saw, I kind of cheat. I just use one of these buzz saws and one of these clips. And I like to put it, I know it's probably illegal, but I like to put it right in the corner like that. If you want the saw in down position, you can do it like that. If you want it up like this, but I like it right on the corner. So it's kind of halfway, just like that. Now the secret to making really detailed looking tools, besides the build of the tool, is the surroundings. I don't know about you guys, when I use a miter saw like this, I make a huge mess. So putting bits of sawdust on the floor always adds a lot of detail. Stick that in there at an angle, and then I fill the trash can here with some boards, a little pipe. Also, I have determined that the candlestick makes for like the perfect construction adhesive tube, which if you've ever been on a construction site, those are being thrown away everywhere, whether it's caulk or silicone or liquid nails, something like that. So I put one of those in there as a spent tube of construction adhesive. And then of course we need our worker here. Just put him right in front. And you have a nice little scene there. So in my mock, I am going to plop this right in the mock. Not on this base plate. I got a different base plate. But I thought that turned out pretty nice. So my blade went down. Some other tools, I did a table saw in my tools, tips, and tricks and techniques, but I wanted to update it to be more of a portable table saw. Now this is not super portable, but I did put some more traditional legs on it as opposed to a cabinet saw. And I love how this works. I've got this blade, and I did some silver plates next to it to look like a throat plate. And I've just got that kind of stuck down in the middle there. And it fills the gap really nicely. I got my fence here. I think that turned out pretty cool. Now, one thing I've wanted to make for a long time is a folding ladder that looks good. And this has perplexed me since I was a child, because everybody has these pieces. And, you know, initially you go like this, okay, folding ladder, it looks terrible. And one side has a clip, one doesn't. I don't like it. It doesn't look good. And there's a few different ways you can configure this, but I haven't found a way I liked until now. I think this turned out pretty good. Let me show you. So this design was inspired by a couple of things. I recently picked up these pieces. I do wish it didn't have the bar on here and just the opposing clips. I know there are some alt brick companies that make that. And I think I even have some from WeBrick, possibly. But anyway, in genuine Lego, that's as close as I could get. Also, the droid arm looks really nice for the hinge piece between the two sides of the ladder. So basically, this is what I did. I put two of these not towards the edge, because otherwise they'll get in the way of the hinge piece, the kind of swing support piece, whatever you want to call it. These are going to go right here. And see where these hanging down pieces kind of don't belong, but they're not super noticeable. And I think that looks really good. Now to add a little bit to it, we can put a little paint tray on there, like that. And maybe a little paint can or whatever you want to put, maybe some tools up there. Now we still have one problem with this ladder. I like it, but what do we do with these clips on the bottom? If we just clip this down, it's going to be too tall and kind of awkward looking. Well, the thing I've learned with Lego is when you have a problem like that, the best thing to do is bury it. Bury it in the ground. And so if we're going to use a Mills plate, we have some negative space to work with. And here I just put some bricks on the side of a plate, and these clip pieces fit too wide as far as bricks, so I just need to fill in around it there, and we have a nice ladder. A whole bunch of pieces out here, and determined that these would be best in the center, and this is just a snot piece, a plate, a jumper, and a 1x1 tile. We're going to put two of these in the middle facing outward, just like that, and this will hold really nicely on the ladder. And then I have some more snot pieces with a 1x2 cheese slope, and we can just put those on the outside. And just like that, this is totally locked in, very minimal gaps, and a beautiful looking ladder. All right, so that's enough for tools. Like I said, I have a whole video on that. If you want to see that, check it out. Now let's talk a little bit about color. I have a couple different color palettes here. This is what I like to use for my wood tones. If you're building a construction site, the wood tones are going to be very important. I find regular tan to look the most accurate for like fresh pine wood, which is the primary construction wood that you're going to find in homes, at least in the United States. I've done videos on this before, and people in Europe are like, holy cow, they make your homes out of wood? Yes, a majority of our homes are made out of wood, mostly wood. I find that dark tan looks better for aged wood, but raw wood, not stained, not finished, just a little dirty and maybe dried out. So we have fresh pine like you'd find for 2x4s and 4x8 sheets of plywood, aged wood, dark tan, medium nougat. Definitely looks a little more like stained wood. So this I think works better for like furniture or maybe a finished floor. Same with reddish brown. Most natural woods are not that dark, and the ones that are, you're not going to be building homes out of. Things like walnut, maybe mahogany, stuff like that. So these are more like stained woods, but these are the two I rely on for construction wood. Now in here I've got a spectrum of colors that I would use for concrete or possibly masonry as well. The most obvious being light and dark gray. Obviously great concrete choices, good for flooring. I find that dark tan looks a lot like a freshly poured piece of concrete, like freshly poured sidewalk looks a lot like that. Maybe a basement floor, maybe a patio. So this works well as a wood color and as a concrete color. And then of course you have your old grays, which work well too. Personally, mine are always in really rough shape, and I don't have a ton of them. I got a pretty decent selection, but if you're trying to get real specific and you need like 50 of these, no, all this stuff is just from sets from when I was a kid. So some little tips on color there, but let's go ahead and get into some different techniques with walls. Now, one thing I really like to do in construction is I like to use these 1x2 plates with the round sides as a retaining wall. This could be great for landscaping. This is going to be great for elevation changes, but it looks like a block stacked retaining wall. And you can really conform this to any shape, which is one reason I really like this. You can wrap it on a curved road, which works really nicely. I did that in my old city, and it looked really cool on a curved road plate. But you can really shape it to anything. So if you're doing like flower beds or a retaining wall in the front of the house, lots of different shapes you can make with this. You can take a funky shape like this and like perfectly wrap it and get it to attach. And I'll show you the best way to do that. So you have to kind of build your base plate so that it attaches in the middle and kind of on the outsides, and then you have tile in the middle. So we can stick our shape on here. And you have to make sure that it's tile for at least the width of the wall going around. At this point, we can find our center. The easiest way to do that is just fold it right in half. There's our center. And I'm just going to stick the center down right in the middle, like that, wrapping the shape around. Now, you might be saying, well, you're not going to get a nice round number, and that's true. But the cool thing is, because of this flexibility, if this sits a millimeter or so off the wall, it's not really the end of the world. Like right here, you can see this does not quite make it all the way in line with this stud, but I'm attaching it out here. I'm not attaching it right here. So I can come around and stick the end, straighten this portion out, and it just has a little angle right there, which is fine. You're never really going to see it. And if you are, it's not enough to really look bad, in my opinion. So just like that, you can really wrap this around just about any shape. Now, one thing about these is they don't make a 1x piece of this. You can do a 1x1 round, which works okay if you want to fill in these gaps, but it is a different profile. It doesn't look the same as this piece. What I tend to do is on the ends, I just like to fold them in, and you can incorporate it right into the landscaping. You build it right into your next layer here and just plate right over the top. And it also gives it some more structural stability if you do it that way. And if you don't want this top layer like that, you take it off, put this underneath the plate, you're good to go. All right, so let's talk about walls here. Now, the most obvious one that I'm sure everyone knows, the masonry brick, and it comes in a ton of different colors. This is not all of them. And obviously fantastic building material, very easy to work with. I do wish they made it in corners and odd numbers. That would make it even better to work with. But lots of stuff you can do with masonry brick. But one little tip I like to give you, let's say you're building this down all the way to like ground level. I don't like doing brick all the way down. What I typically do is I'll usually put a just standard brick on the bottom. And the reason being is most houses that I see are going to have a poured foundation, and then they're going to start with the block wall. So I like to leave a smooth portion on the bottom and then work my block wall up. Now another cool thing you can do with masonry brick is you can make it look under construction. You know, using tiles and plates, you can kind of give it that jagged edge. Another really cool thing to do is put a stack of bricks next to it so it looks like they're working on it. You know, I've got a broken one here and I've got a bunch of angled ones and some on the ground here. And basically I've just got my masonry bricks on the bottom and then a bunch of plates on top. Now you might be wondering how all these are angled and in weird positions and none of this is going to fall off. The secret is you're going to use a mix of tiles and jumpers. And they all have their own characteristics. So if I want to put a small pile here, I put a jumper down. Maybe I put another jumper down. If I put a jumper on top of this, I can spin it and twist it. And if I put a plate here, I can also spin and twist it, but I can also slide it. See, I can move this in either direction to make it look messy or roughly stacked. And these will rotate just fine next to each other. And then I can take another one, put it on top at a different angle, and really give it that kind of messy look, like just a bunch of bricks tossed about that are about to be used on this wall. Now with masonry, everyone knows you can also spin it around, and now you have siding, which is pretty cool. And there's lots of different ways to do siding. This is a nice thin siding. You can also do tile for siding if you want something a little bit wider. And obviously you can do that in any color, but this is going to require some sort of snot technique. Either a whole lot of snot bricks or putting a plate up on end like this, which doesn't always make for the greatest house. Now, if you're trying to give the illusion of a house under construction, this might work well. A couple of other types of wooden walls you can do. Maybe you're doing a house under construction and you want like a plywood wall. Well, I find that the larger pieces of tan work really well to look like plywood boards. A little bit bigger would be nice. The problem is the size is going to be kind of funky. You know, if you compare this to a minifig, that's definitely would not look like a 4x8 sheet. 4x8 sheet would probably be like a 6x3, but they don't make a 6x3 tile. So I guess this is the next best thing. But if you're doing like sheathing on the outside of a house, this would look really good. You could also do it in white, which would look like on the interior, could look like drywall. On the exterior, it would look like Tyvek. If you don't know what Tyvek is, it's like the house wrapping, like the plastic they put in there to kind of weatherproof the house. You'll often see that before they side the house. They'll put that plastic wrapping on it. As you may have seen in my city, you can also do logs. And this is just these scalloped pieces used in a snot technique to go sideways. And if you don't want to put log ends on it, you don't have to, but they do look nice. You can also just put a flat piece on the end to end it and have like the logs covered on the end. But this does give it a nice rustic look. When you attach it to the ground though, you are going to have to boost it up a little bit. And what I like to do is just put a piece of tile underneath. Just like that. If you're building more industrial buildings, you could also go for a corrugated metal look. This is a piece from Lego that I don't have a lot of, but I'm very intrigued by. And it's just a panel with this texture. These work good for shipping containers too. But there's a few other ways you can do this too. These pieces look nice, like scalloped, corrugated steel walls. I've done like some industrial basements in that before. Or you can go really fine. And this is just a whole bunch of these 1x2 pieces. And I should mention, both sides have a different look. These look really nice for like farm applications, or you mix them with other types of walls. Lots of cool stuff you can do with that. So just some ideas on how you can texture walls better in your builds if you're doing a construction scene. Something else that I find very important to a construction scene is stairs. And there's a few different types of stairs we can do. First one that I like to do is a poured concrete stair. And my favorite piece for these is this one right here. The 2x2 with 2 studs on top. And the reason I really like this over using tile is it doesn't have the thumbnail edge under it, so it makes for a very seamless concrete stair. The way that I build these is, I just build them into sections like this. I like my stairs to be 2 plates tall. I know traditionally in Lego they're 3 plates or 1 brick tall, but I find for these little legs that's too tall of a step. I also think that 1 plate tall is too low. To me, 2 plates tall is the perfect size stair for Lego minifigs. And then we just make layers. So the next one is 3x4, the next one is 2x4, and then 1x4. This one I did have to use a tile on. And then you stack them, and it just makes for an incredibly seamless concrete stair and very strong. There's lots of good connection points there. Now on a construction site, I also like to make a more temporary looking stair. It's also going to look more like the stairs that might be on a deck. And the way I do that is I build them like traditional deck stairs. I believe they're called stringers. And these are just 1x2 plates mixed with 1x1 plates. And I do them in a zigzag fashion just like that. You're going to need 2 of them. If you're doing a really wide stair set, you'll want multiple, more than 2. And after that, it's quite simple to just take tiles and connect them across the top. Using this pattern, you get this nice gap in the middle, so they look like temporary stairs or deck stairs. And then this is not totally necessary. You could just use 1x1 bricks. And there we have our wooden stairs. You can make them bigger if you want bigger. If you go much bigger than 6 wide, you'll probably want to put a stringer down the middle as well. An idea I've been toying around with, I had a fan send me a picture of a concept he was working on of a wrought iron steel stair set. And the piece he used I found very interesting. It was this axle piece. And the reason this is so intriguing is it looks like a wrought iron stair where you've got kind of those grippers that are designed to grab your shoes so you don't slip. These also often have holes in them. And the idea is we could just plug this into some bricks. I've got a couple headlight bricks here. Like that. And you have a stair. Now the way I did this, I put a couple of tiles on the end, and I'm actually going to run them in a snot fashion. If we get a few more here, we can build them right into a stair set and connect it. Now there's one thing I don't love about this stair set at this point. I'm still workshopping this a little bit, and that is the width. This is wider than 6 wide. Now with these axles, you can pull these out a little bit and make them a little bit wider. So you can make it like 6.5. You could also put like a bar in here and a clip and just kind of center it on a slider technique. But it is not a whole number of Lego studs. So it does make it a little challenging. I'm still working on that part. But a really good look for a wrought iron, maybe a fire escape or an industrial stair set that's metal. I think that looks really cool. I don't remember who sent me that either. I tried to find the email and I couldn't find it. So if that's your idea, claim it in the comments. I'll pin your comment. Moving on, let's talk more about walls here. Now, in a construction site, one of the most important things I think to making it look authentic is going to be stud walls. And there's lots of different ways you can do stud walls. The first and probably most obvious one is just to use bricks, 1x1 bricks, stacked really high, or you can get some taller ones like these. These are 2 1x1x3s, just stacked on top of each other, and you can space them out. Now the problem with this technique, to me, is spacing. Number one, these are supposed to simulate 2x4s. 2x4s are not square. 4x4s are, but you wouldn't build a wall out of 4x4s. So 2x4s need to be more rectangular on the edge and more thin going this way. And also the spacing. When you use bricks, you're stuck on spacing to what you can do. These are 1 apart, which I think look way too close, especially in relation to the width of the 2x4. So that doesn't work super well. You can do this and have them spaced 2 apart, which works better. If you're going to put pipes and stuff in here, which I did a whole video on pipes and wires and all kinds of things you can put in stud walls, 2 wide works really well for that because a lot of pieces will fit in the middle, but the spacing is a little inaccurate. You know, it's incredibly wide, and again, I don't like the width of these studs. But at the end, you can seal it down like that and have a stud wall. Now let's say we want to try to do the happy medium here in between. We can make an interesting pattern like this. And what I did here, I did this in different colors so you can see the pattern. And it's going to go 1 by 1, tile, plate, tile, jumper, tile, plate, tile, jumper. And that's going to give you a 1.5 stud spacing, which I think does look pretty good. It is going to create some complications of its own with the edges having weird spacing on it. And the top is not just going to stick down a normal piece. You have to build a specific top with jumpers in it. These are just jumpers here so that we can connect on that middle stud. Because the rule with jumpers, if you jump in, you got to jump out. So they have to have an equal and opposite jumper on there. That's a pretty good spacing. I still don't love the width of the studs though, but that's about, I think, the best you can do using this method of stud wall. So let's look at some other methods of stud wall. One that I really like to do, and I'm most likely going to use in my mock for this challenge, is building in a snot fashion. And what I do is I start with a 1 by 8 plate. I put a tile in the middle, and then I just build out with whatever width I want. And this is nice because I can customize the width. Here I have 5 plates high, which when I subtract 1 for this tile, it's only going to be 4. I can make this bigger, I can make this smaller pretty easily to customize this wall and fit the space I need. Then I just build a bunch of these and stack them. Now there is going to be a few drawbacks to this. You have to attach it in a snot fashion, so you're going to have to do something like this. And these are just snot pieces stuck on the side of it. Now, and I also just mixed the color because I was running out of pieces. So it probably would make this out of just regular tan, but I switched it up because that's what I had. Now you are going to have to attach it on something unique like this, and the connection points will be quite limited. You're basically going to connect on the corners. This is going to be a lot like doing this log wall here. On the end here, I didn't have any 1 by 8s in tan, so I did a dark gray here. Dark tan, sorry. And then you can put, now the cool thing is you can put more snot pieces here and just change the direction of the wall. So now you can start building out this way and, you know, box in a whole room. I really like that technique. I think it looks good. You can also put a plate or tile across the top to lock it in. If you get real creative, you can find which ones of these positions in here that you can replace the brick with a snot piece to connect the top as well. That is possible to find some connections in there. One final way of doing it, and I decided to do this one to look like metal, mostly because I didn't have a lot of pieces, but you can do this with brackets. And I just use brackets here. It gives a really nice spacing. I love the spacing here, and it keeps the top and bottom narrow. You have to be a little careful when you use brackets though, because they have half plate spacing on them. So it can make for a really tricky height spacing. But if you have 2 of them, they will balance out and equal 1 plate. If you just do 1, that can be really challenging. And then something like this, you know, same thing. You can snot it in like this. The whole thing's going to fall apart on me now. I was not very gentle with it. There we go. And then we just connect it to the ground, put this here, and then right over the top. And that would look really good in like an industrial building. I'd probably make this one gray, not dark gray, to kind of give it a finished look. A lot of more modern buildings are using like aluminum stud walls as opposed to wood, especially in commercial settings. If they're not load-bearing walls, you can still screw drywall to it just fine. Or it could be steel, I guess. But lots of different ideas there for how to do stud walls. Now, a couple things expanding on that we can branch out into. One would be joists. You know, if you're going to do this for a floor, you space them much closer together, and you can make joists. Now, this section here I have filled in with panels, which looks kind of cool from the underside because it looks like you have plywood over the top. But you can also just leave it open. But yeah, basically the same technique as this here with the dark tan, but just a thinner spacing for a joist. Another thing you can do is make trusses, just like this. Now I know someone's going to say it, these really should be coming out of the middle. The problem is they need to have round edges to make this work, and you aren't going to get round ones that are long enough. So I think this is good enough. Sorry, I'm not a construction person. I don't build homes, but I am pretty handy and I'm a pretty decent woodworker. So you can make trusses like this, and I left some spaces here where they're not tiled because you can then make pieces like this that will attach them. So you just put some of these here, one in the middle, need a few more. Kind of like that. And you can make multiple of them and just stack them. I haven't experimented around with this too much yet. This might be too far apart. Depending on how many you want to make, you might push these closer, but that can make for a really cool construction roof. Well, I hope you guys found this video interesting and helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll do more just like this in the future. That's all I have for this time, and we will see you next time.